Hey guys, this is Ken McElroy, and you are listening to the Mailbox Money Show with Bronson Hill.
All right, welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. I am Bronson Hill. I'm very excited to be here. I have a good friend with me, Gab Boschè, who is awesome. Her and her husband Brian have a group called the Purpose Company, and it's all about creating, like discovering what your purpose is. I feel like we all have a purpose here. Where there's all a reason that we were put on this earth to do something, to be there for someone, to support something, a cause. And to me, I've got a couple, right? I want to help people experience financial freedom so that they can really live out their values. And I also want to end modern day human slavery in the world. Those are some visions and some missions that I have. But really, when you figure out what your purpose is, what you're here to do, it really causes you to get passionate, and you can endure a lot of things, right? You can endure just about anything if you have the correct why. So we're going to jump into this interview again. Gab and her husband have written many books. One of the best people about building a brand. So again, if you are someone who's like, hey, I am building a brand, I have a business, I have this and that. Listen, if you're somebody who's not, and you're like, I don't know, I just want to be a passive investor, it's still going to be very interesting to you because I'm sure you still want to leave a legacy in the world, right? So a brand is basically what you are known for. So it doesn't mean necessarily everybody has to know your name, but when you stand for a cause, it really causes incredible change in the world. So hope you enjoyed this interview. Let's jump in. Yeah, welcome to the Mailbox Money Show. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Bronson. Thanks so much for having me.
It's so good to have you. I was sharing that I've been a part of your mastermind, which is awesome. And I think it's a lot of people are like, well, you run a mastermind. Why do you have a mastermind? Why are you in a mastermind? I said, well, it's just amazing the people you meet, and you can meet amazing experts. And for you, I haven't met anybody that I found that just really gets marketing, gets branding, gets telling a story. And there's so much value in that. And I think, this show is really dedicated to passive investors, but so many of us, we want to really be able to make an impact in the world. And to be able to do that, you have to be good at telling a story. You have to be good at building a brand. And there's a lot of value in that. So why don't you give us a little bit about your story and just kind of how you got into this? So you didn't start and say, hey, I'm going to be a professional speaker. I'm going to be a branded expert. I'm going to coach others. Like how did you kind of get where you're at right now?
Yeah, it's definitely something that you don't go to school for necessarily. I mean, when I was in college, I was studying politics and religion. So it's like the two things that you're not supposed to talk about at Thanksgiving dinner. I really doubled up on both of those. But I really did it because I wanted to change the world, which is why I think a lot of us get into what we do is that we really do want to make a big impact. We really do want to help other people. We really do want to leave a positive legacy. And it didn't take me very long to realize that politics was more of the problem than the answer. And I really went down this path of discovering what is it that I have that I can help other people with. And so asking some of these core questions like what have I overcome that I can help others overcome? Who do I feel most called to help? What's the hardest thing that I've overcome that I can help other people navigate through? I mean, just asking some of these core questions really at a time where I was asking a question that I think most of your listeners are probably asking, which is what's next for me? I
Yeah.
think all of us are wondering what's next for us, whether it's what's next in our business or next in our relationship or next in the next season of our lives. We're always wanting to know what's next. And so for me, it was finding what's next for me was the answer for that was really finding my purpose and getting clear on my purpose, which we define purpose at the Purpose Company as the best of what you have to help other people. When you identify with clarity and conviction what is the best of what you have to help other people, you have clarity, you have confidence, you have direction moving forward. And that's really what it was for me. I mean, I went from really feeling like a kid lost at Costco, trying to figure out, like, are you my purpose? Are you my purpose? Like, I was so excited about everything and anything that I really wasn't known for anything at all. And it really did take time for me to really discover what that core purpose was. What problem did I want to solve for other people? And then that journey of how I became a branded expert was how I solved that problem for myself. Because I think a lot of people want to be known for something that they haven't overcome themselves. And so I kind of innately knew that I needed the due diligence. Like we say all the time, your story is your authority. And I needed to
Yeah.
figure out what authority could I develop through my story. And that was really kind of where this whole journey really began for me.
Yeah, yeah, it really is something. I think for a lot of people that I know, they at least a lot of our listeners as well, they're in a business, or maybe they did a business, or they found a way to kind of develop something. And then for a lot of people, it's maybe on the other side. I know you're young and we're young, but some people might be 60 or 70, or they're kind of 50s and they're retired, or they have a business and they're like, well, I want to, like, I've got financial freedom, but I want to make that difference in the world. And I think that for a lot of us, we obviously can make a difference in our family. We can give to causes we believe in. But really, I think the biggest thing is just being able to reach more people, right? And how you do that is through
Yeah.
a brand, is through finding a way. And I remember when I started Bronson Equity, I wanted to get like super clear on like the person that I was trying to reach. And it's changed a little bit, but like I had this guy that I used to work with. I don't know if he's listening, he probably may not be listening now, but his name was Bart. And Bart was a medical device sales guy. And he was like in his 50s. And he had 3 daughters and they were getting ready to go to school and he couldn't, like, the job was such a good job that he couldn't quit, but I could tell he was kind of disengaged at work. And it was kind of like, so that was the person that I wanted to reach and help about financial freedom and investing. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, someone who's saying, yeah, it'd be great to have a brand, or I have this cause I believe in, for me, I want to try to end modern day human slavery in the world. And so how do I, like, what's kind of step 1, 2, or 3 of like kind of moving toward what it is you're looking to do?
Yeah, I think a lot of people talk about the riches being in the niches. I think we hear that a lot, but I think that that's only partially true. I think that it's not just having a niche audience. I think it's actually more important to have a niche solution. So that's why we talk a lot about message mobility. Message mobility is really just saying, I have one message that I can serve multiple people with. And I think sometimes people just get really pigeonholed, that they're like, I only
Right.
want to help, single moms with cleaning out their closets on Tuesdays. Like at that point, you really lose a lot of clientele because there just aren't enough people that you can actually serve. And so I think personal brand, when you boil it down, personal brand is what problem do you solve for other people?
Yeah.
And it's how are you presenting that problem to the world. And so personal brand is really making sure that other people see you how you want to be seen. And so oftentimes I'll get stopped after I'm speaking on conferences or doing a book signing or something, and people come up to me like, oh my gosh, Gab, like, did you picture yourself doing this? You have this incredible personal brand in it. And it is really funny because it's not an intentional thing that I built over time. Truthfully, it was me saying, how do I position myself as a solution to someone's problem? Now, a
Yeah.
lot of your listeners will probably fall under kind of one of two camps. One is I'm not even touching personal brand because it sounds like I'm taking selfies for a living and like tweeting about my breakfast. And then the other are starting to dabble, but they're like, honestly, it feels too personal. Like a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome. They talk about the fear of rejection, not wanting to put themselves out there because like, what if people don't like me? But it's
Yeah.
kind of a hot take. But honestly, I don't think imposter syndrome is actually a thing. I think we actually elevate and act as if we will have rejection for just showing up as ourselves. But the truth is, when we go online, we don't have to show up as ourselves. We should actually show up as a solution to someone's problem. When you see me join my master classes or see our ads or join any of our programs, like the brand that got you there wasn't, Gab Boschè hanging out with my cat on the weekends, like running, doing like the hobby side of Gab. It
Yeah.
was the Gab saying, hey, Bronson, I see where you're at and I see where you want to go. Can I help you? That's what personal brand is it's
Yeah.
the part of your personality that solves someone's problem. And I think
Yeah.
when people get that, it removes the personal rejection side of it, where people feel like, well, what if they don't like me? It's not that they don't like you. They don't know you. How could they know you just from a LinkedIn post or a podcast or a book that you're writing? They don't like the image of you that you're saying, I can help you with this problem. I can be a solution to that challenge. And I think that really gives people a lot of freedom to not so obsess with showing up as yourself on social media. I actually don't think you should, or you have to show up as yourself on social media. I think you should show up as a solution to someone's problem. I think that that's actually the cornerstone of how I've been able to create a brand that I've been able to create.
Yeah, they say people's biggest fear is public speaking, and I think spiders is another one. Which I know
Yeah,
spiders got up there, but
exactly.
our fear of dying. These are big ones, but a lot of times, yeah, with public speaking, and I've done a lot of, you done a lot of it. It's getting out of your own head and just helping people, right? I mean, nobody shows up to an event that's like some sort of personal development event, or in our case, real estate event or something, thinking like, yeah, I just really want to judge that speaker or find that they're
Oh my
like,
gosh, yeah.
they're coming because they want us. They're there for a reason. They have something that they want. I feel like if you can always turn it back to how can I help someone, and I think that's just such a great approach to branding, right? Is like, if you brand yourself as I help solve this problem, like we help solve people's problems as far as educating on financial education and alternative investments. We also help people with actual solutions for that, right? Here you can invest in this deal or this deal. And we've had a range of deals. Some have gone phenomenally well. We've had some challenges in other ones. But I think when we're honest about that, that even provides a solution for people to say it's okay to talk about challenges. It's okay to talk
Yeah.
about things that don't go well, but I think it's good. So I want to talk a little bit about finding your purpose, because this is really a core to your brand as well. I know for me, when I was back in my day, I was a youth pastor for a number of years. And then I took a test called the Strengths Finder test,
Oh
which
yeah.
is basically kind of gets you into these themes. And I remember I took it, it just felt at the time, felt so unspiritual, right? I remember this youth pastor and I like competition achiever, a couple of mine. and which I think you have achieved, I'd imagine too, right? You
And
probably,
yeah, competition is my number one strength
those are my
for
top
sure.
two. That's why we get along so well, Gab. Uh, but anyway, it was just super, super helpful. And I started saying maybe this is a salesperson. Then I went into medical sales. I went from being basically fired as a youth pastor. I don't want to tell that story much, but I was actually fired. I never fired from any job. And they're just like, yeah, I just don't think it's a good fit. And we just, how do you get fired as a youth pastor? It was. And then I went from being 2 years later to be the number one person in this company where I was selling. And it was like, it just felt like it was a really good fit. And that's, I think, how it feels when you step into your purpose. And you guys have an assessment. You and your husband, Brian, have created this amazing assessment about purpose. Can you talk about that and just kind of how people step into their purpose?
Yeah, it took a decade to develop the purpose factor assessment, and it was something that we solved for ourselves, and we solved it for our community. Then we started solving it for our clients, and people started coming to us saying, "Okay, you guys have been able to go from really not having it all together, really being very unclear about who you are and what you can do to being incredibly successful. How were you able to do it?" And it really was from finding your purpose. And so working with the major companies that we worked with, and I've spoken everywhere from like Northrop Grumman and the CIA and Naval Sea Command to Expedia, Comcast, Google, Microsoft. So we worked with so many cool, amazing companies, and every time I was coming in to work with a company, they were always saying, every single person would come to me afterwards and like, "Oh my gosh, like I want to find my purpose. How can I find my purpose?" And so we created this on-demand program called the Purpose Factor Assessment that really anyone can take it. It takes about 20 minutes, and you can just go to purposetest.com and check it out for $49 right now. You can find your purpose, and it creates a 49-page document. What's so cool about it is when you're reading through the results, I mean, we have people who will, I mean, I've got major executives who are like, "What is this, witchcraft? Like, how do you know all this stuff about me?" And why it works so well is because it's been battle tested through a decade of qualitative research, and it's worked with individuals and it's worked with companies. Over 16,000 employees went through it last year alone. And what's so amazing about it is I think it really gives language to people's emotions, where you maybe some instance you were like, "I really like this job," or "that project was really fulfilling," or "I really feel myself leaning into this." It gives you language to understand why something feels aligned with your purpose, and that's what we call fulfillment. So what are those things that how can we create fulfillment on demand? That's a big focus for us. We also too, through the assessment, you can find out what your core values are. And one of our favorite things to do is when we teach core values, we actually will, with a team, have everybody take it, find their core values, and then connect it to the core values of the company or organization. So we say all the time, purpose personalizes the mission. No matter who you are, what industry that you're in, if you can help your people find their purpose and connect it to their work, you've got employees, you've got clients, you've got partners for life. And that's really what we want to do, is be able to revolutionize the world with purpose. So we say all the time, we're in the business of democratizing purpose. We think purpose has been too ethereal and too mushy and too expensive for so many people. And so for $49 and 20 minutes, people can find their purpose.
Yeah, and that's really huge. I mean, there's a proverb I like. It says, without vision, people perish, and you can say without purpose, people perish, right? And so I see so many people at different ages. I think of my daughter who's 12, is just kind of discovering things about herself, and just like be able to discover your purpose at 12, or just what a vision for your life can be. And even people that I see as they're older, they get retired and they don't really have. A lot of times what will happen, it's kind of a phenomenon. People will turn. I heard somebody talking, Dan Sullivan actually was talking about this from Strategic Coach. He would say they wait to about 60 and they kind of start winding their life down, and they kind of like they sell a house, buy a house, whatever. And then about 10, 15 years later, a lot of times they die, right? Because they don't really have any new vision. And he said he wants to live. He had this book. The title was "How My Plan to Live to 156." And he said the key is like, I may not live to 156, but continually have more and more things out in front of me. And when you do that, it actually sends a signal to your body, to your spirit, your soul, every part of you, that like you're here for a purpose, for a reason. And so I think it's incredibly grounding to feel like you have a purpose, that you're here.
Yeah, and there's so much data that actually proves even the opposite. They say that the two most dangerous years of your life, your mortality rate is associated with the year that you're born and the year that you retire. And so many times
Wow.
people, when they retire, they actually have a huge increase in health episodes,
Wow.
particularly heart attacks, because they've actually been able to say it's because of a lack of meaning. And so
Oh,
you go
wow.
from having high expectations, people relying on you, to, consuming, whether it is golf or television or whatever it is that retirement looks like for some people. But But that alone is so fascinating because you can actually see how important purpose is. And so they've actually done studies with palliative care, and what they've actually found is on people's deathbeds, the number one regret they have is not I wish I made more money, or even I wish I spent more time with my family. The number one regret is that they did not live up to their potential.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people all the time. I say, I'm in the business of regret minimization. Like, that's my job. Like, that's
Yeah.
it in a nutshell. It's like, I never want to meet somebody in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s that has said, I regret not doing something. And I
Yeah.
think that's what purpose does. Is purpose gives you permission to fully step into your full potential, to fully step into who it is that you're called to be, because it gives you clarity. I think so many times people are so reactive in their decision making. I think most people end up in the jobs and the relationships and the cities that they're in just because it was a series of people asking them to do things. And we
Yeah.
call it chance or luck or whatever, but it really, so many people, they're in the passenger seat of their own life. And I
Yeah.
think getting really clear about your purpose of knowing, how do I create fulfillment on demand? How do I know with clarity what problems I can solve for other people, and who is it that I'm called to help? Like, just some of those core questions that we help answer through the purpose factor assessment. It creates so much clarity and confidence, and like just seeing people know that they know that this is what they're supposed to do is, I think it's the most beautiful gift we can give the world.
It's really interesting. You talk about purpose. And I just think I was thinking of a couple of these kind of sliding door moments in my life, or seasons where big things happen, like being fired from a job, living in another state, being fired from a job, and then going through a divorce. Went through a divorce, unfortunately, 8 years ago. And these are moments that like they really shifted and really caused me to focus in on like, what am I here to do? And I remember it really happened going through my divorce. I'm 44 now. So I was like late 30s, I mean, 37, whatever, and just saying like, I feel like I'm here to do something more than what I'm doing. And I think we all kind of have that hunger and longing that we know there's something more in us, or at least a lot of
Yep.
us do. And especially if you're an achiever or you're competitive, it's like, oh my gosh. But it's like, I want to die one day and be empty. I want to be like, you know what, I at least, because that was one of the biggest things I realized, like you were talking about regret minimization. I didn't want to be 78 years old and say, what if I had tried? What if I had
Yeah.
just gone for it? Because like the older I get, there's this phenomenon that the quicker the years go, right? And so I literally every year I literally create the next year of, these are my goals. This is what I want to create. This is
Yep.
what I want to happen. And I watch these things actually happen because I've been intentional on creating them. How does like purpose tie in with like having goals or specific measurable things for your life, looking for like, how do you tie those two together?
Yeah, I think when you know your purpose, it becomes the ultimate lens by which you make decisions. And I think that's what our world needs more than ever. Is I think that so many people either rely on their community to make decisions for them, or their company to make decisions for them. I think so many of us really are just so reactive in how it is that we're making decisions. And so if you we really make decisions for one of two reasons, either by default or design. So default is you're just reacting and letting decisions be made for you. Usually most of our default is fear, and specifically fear of rejection. It's like, which of these options is going to make me feel less crappy about myself? That's most of us and how we're making decisions. Versus if you're making decisions by design, that means I'm now intentional. I now know this is the highest and best use of my purpose. Even if it's uncomfortable, there's an I must. Like, I must do this thing. I feel called, I feel drawn, I feel pulled. And that's such a more powerful way that ultimately you want to make decisions. But it's interesting. Brian and I were actually working on a book on decision making. We're like, we had all these brilliant ideas. We're like, that's it. This is our next book. I've written 7 books. Brian and I have written 3 together. And we're like, yes, this is it. This is what we're working on. And we were meeting with our mentor, John Maxwell. We were walking him through. We're like, hey, here's our book idea. What do you think? And he goes, huh, yeah. He's like, I think decision making is important. And he goes, but I think it's decision management is actually more important. And I don't know if you've ever had a mentor or a friend tell you something that you know is so true, but you're so mad. You're like, dang it, there goes my business idea, there goes my book idea. But John was so correct in that. I think a lot of times we do obsess over decision making instead of decision management. Oftentimes, if you make a decision, it's much easier to change once you're in forward motion. Like, it's easier
Mhm.
to turn a car that's already rolling versus if you're just trying to sit and overthink. Because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people in this world are so afraid of making the wrong decision, making the wrong decision with starting a company, or making the wrong decision of writing a book, or making the wrong decision of, should I post this thing or not? I mean, it's crazy how we overthink things, that I do think if it's like, make the decision, we can manage it later. I think
Yeah.
that's probably a recipe that a lot of people need to buy into to feel a lot happier about their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, I have this saying that life has an action bias. And if you take two people that just simply, like, one has great ideas and they have all these great theories, but they don't take the actions, versus somebody just takes like a small step toward their goal each day. It's like the person who does that will just destroy it. They'll get there because they're actually
Totally.
taking those steps toward what they want. And why is it? Yeah, because I've watched people, I think of people at church, and I just think of one specific friend is like, they see what you're doing all these things, and they're like, oh, yeah, I want to do this. And then they don't actually take the actions. Right. And I know that can be frustrating as a coach or someone, I see it in friends, I see it in people I work with. It's just like, if you just actually did what you said you want to do,
Yeah.
you would actually get there. Like, well, what do you think causes some people? Is it just that when they get motivated, they'll do it? Or some people, like, I guess there's a lot there, but is it just a decision where something all of a sudden shifts and they're like, okay, this is it. And I'm just going to go do it now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they just need to have a conviction moment. So two things need to be in place for someone to have conviction. They need to have pain and they need to have clarity.
yeah.
So if you have clarity, then you have motivation but no direction. But if you have pain, you have motivation. You don't have motivation, but you do have direction. And it's that key to be able to understand pain simply means the cost of inaction.
Hmm.
So if you have someone who's not willing to move forward as a client, or as your kid, as someone you're coaching, maybe as someone who's on your team, it means that they don't know the cost of inaction. It's so amazing. Right now, we're studying a lot on pleasure versus pain receptors of what makes someone make decisions. This is what Brian and I spend our date nights discussing extensively, of like what actually causes people to move into change. And I think it is so interesting because we're actually reading through a research paper right now pretty extensively that talks about what they call conviction narrative theory. And to kind of put it really kind of simply, is the narrative that you believe about what will happen after you take action will determine whether or not you take action.
Hmm.
And so I think that whether it's clients, friends, kids who don't take action, it's usually that they are not clear about what the cost of an action is. And then the second part about clarity is they don't know what's on the other side of it. And I think a lot of times people aren't able to answer the worth it question, which is, why
Yeah.
should I do this? Is it going to be worth it? And for someone to think that something should be worth it, they have to first of all believe that they're worth it. And then they also too have to be willing to sacrifice, because there's sacrifice associated with everything. And so you're not going to want to give up your favorite food, and you won't think that it's worth it to get in the best shape of your life if you're like, well, does it really matter? No one really sees me. I don't feel good about myself anyway. That person that I want to start a relationship with, like, they're not going to see me anyway. If you don't think it's worth it, you're not going to do it.
Right.
And so that's why, like you said, kind of those small incremental changes actually have a higher compound effect, is because that person has decided giving 15 minutes or 30 minutes per day towards whatever my goal is, that's worth it. Like, I'm willing to sacrifice that time. So I think it usually is the worth it factor for most people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. If the, like, was it Viktor Frankl says somebody can endure almost any
Yeah.
what if they have a strong how, or if the how is enough, or excuse me, the why. Excuse me, the why.
Yep.
The why is so important. So, um, well, let me ask you. Obviously, if somebody gets their purpose, they get their vision for themselves in place correctly. And like a lot of our listeners I know are just like, well, what's like, okay, I should build a brand. I have this cause, I have this business, I have this thing I want to build, or I want to put myself out there to help to solve this problem. What's like the first, I mean, besides making a decision, what's kind of the first action or a couple action steps that I should do to kind of move towards that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you mimic before you master. I think a lot of times people think, oh my gosh, I just need to get something out there. Like, the amount of times people come to me and they're like, I just need to post every day. I just need to get it out there. Or I just want to write a book. I just want to get it out there. I just want to create a course or create a program or start a company. I just want to get it out there. And whenever anyone says that, I know that they don't have clarity,
Yeah.
because they're just thinking that getting it done guarantees success. And
Mm,
success doesn't necessarily mean monetary success. It just means consumption. Like,
mm,
as an author, writing a book is hard, but getting people to read the darn thing is way harder. And so being able to have intention behind it is super important. So I think the number one thing that you need to do is mimic before you master. Is so look at who are people in my space or who are people that I respect who are doing well. Now, here's a super important part. Don't start with their chapter 20. Don't start going after, Dan Martell now. Look at what Dan Martell did 5 years ago when he was first starting out and start looking at that. What are some accelerators that he did? What made the biggest difference? So I just see a lot of people in the branding space trying to mimic people who are at the top of their game. And it either isn't true and so it doesn't resonate, or it's inorganic and like it just doesn't quite feel right. Like one of my mentors says, advice is kind of like hats, like put it on. If it looks good, keep it, but if not, take it off. And that's kind of how I think when you're trying things out, like have a lab mentality and don't take it so personally and say, hey, if this works, then great. If not, then that's totally fine too. I'm just experimenting. But just trying to put stuff out there and hope that it resonates without a plan, I think is gonna ultimately be frustrating for you. You'll end up being more frustrated and you'll end up just kind of throwing in the towel and be like, what was I thinking? I shouldn't have started a podcast. No one wants to hear from me. Or, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? I shouldn't post on Instagram. Like that was insane that I went live and no one showed up. So, but if you mimic and like, okay, great, I'm just going to do this for 3 months or 5 months or 3 days even. Being consistent, I think, is really, really important. But don't put so much stress on yourself trying to create something from scratch.
Yeah.
There are people who have models, and that's what I found the wealthiest and the smartest do is they take models, they adapt it, and they run.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. When I first started putting videos out there, it did feel very vulnerable, and I had some of the imposter like, oh my gosh, who am I? But then I quickly realized like, well, if it's not good, like no one's going to see it anyway, because the algorithm just kind of like pushes things out. It's like, okay, nobody even, there's so much noise out there. So unless something is really good, but now we study who are the top influencers, what are they talking about? And like you said, even not even just now, but what were they doing before? They kind of help them to get there. And sometimes you'll hear advice from a coach or from someone in your life, like you got it from John Maxwell. I got it from you a little while ago. I wrote Rich Brain was my first book behind me here, and then I'm sorry, not Rich Brain, Fire Yourself, and then Rich Brain is my next book. And then I realized, like in talking with you, like I probably need to make this a series of books, right? So you'd have like Rich Brain, which is only on like the mindset around wealth that allows people to feel worthy of wealth. I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. I think the next book in the series is Rich Habits. Then there's Rich Networks or Rich Life. There's just so many things you can go from there. But it's like a lot of times we're trying to do too much, right? We're trying to do, oh, I'm just going to give them everything. I'm going to target everybody and it's all going to be, and it's like, no, it's just one, what specific problem are you solving? And like you said, because if the clarity is there, then you can actually help solve a specific problem.
Yeah. And I think it's your duty, truly. I think when you've overcome something, you have a duty to share it with other people. And that is what helps you overcome imposter syndrome as quickly as possible. Like if you were in a situation like an emergency situation and someone needed help, you wouldn't not run over there because you're like, well, who am I? I can't help them. You'd be like, no, this person clearly needs help and I pretty much know what to do. Like even if you're not like
Yeah.
100%, you're like, I'm pretty sure, I think I saw this on a show one time. I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
you would go over and do it because there's
You're
this
compelled.
innate sense in us to protect our fellow man. And that's really the essence of starting a personal brand is just saying it's not about me, it's about my
Yeah.
audience. And so anytime I, feel frustrated or overwhelmed or intimidated or whatever those emotions could look like, you just have to continue to remind yourself it's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah.
Because the more you make it about you, the more repelled your audience will be. But the more you make it about them, the more attracted that they're going to be. And so that's a win-win. It wins for you and it wins for them. And so falling in love with your audience, being passionate for them, and protecting them from bad advice, bad investments, bad mistakes that you made in the past, I think is one of the fastest ways to create the most authentic personal brand. Because it's not enough just to say, oh, I have a personal brand. There's lots of people with lots of followers who do really dumb things.
Yeah.
I think the essence is what do you want to be known for? And are you happy about being known for that? I think that's the real question that we should be addressing.
Yeah, I think one thing that really helped me when I started my business was this quote of just make yourself valuable to valuable people. Like
Yep.
find a way to help people and solve problems. And if you can, and I love that you just basically it's not about you, it's about trying to help others. And if you do that, we love people. Like we cheer for people like that. It's like
Yeah.
a hero's journey, right? Well, I didn't know if I really wanted to help. I was just a shy person, and then I went out and did this, and that's a great reminder. Um, Gab, I have tremendous respect for you as a friend, of course, as a marketer, being in your mastermind. I think there's, you encouraged me to write the second book, so I'm rewriting the second book, and also doing paid speaking and some of the things with the mastermind we've created with the Wealth Forum. So I'm very grateful for you for that, and also to Brian as well. How can people follow what you're doing and hear about your mastermind, the Purpose Test, kind of hear about your different offerings?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is for your listeners to find their purpose. That would be the biggest gift that I could give them. So they can go to purposetest.com, and there's a $20 off coupon right there. So it's normally $69. It's $49 right now, that you can go ahead and find your purpose in 20 minutes. So, and it's made for 10th grade and up. So say you've got kids or you've got a team, it's a really beautiful community experience. So we say all the time, we want to change the conversation around the dining room table and the conference table, and moving that more towards purpose. So that's the primary thing. And then if they want to learn anything more about working with us, helping us, or having us come and help on getting clear on your branded expertise, how to turn your purpose into a platform like yours, Bronson, like masterminds, books, TED Talks, all of those things we help people with, they can go to purposecompany.com. And that's really everything about us and who we are and how we help people. So they can check us out at purposecompany.com.
Awesome, Gab. Well, thanks for being here. Really appreciate you. I'm excited for the next event you have live coming up at Consulting Camp, which we're looking forward to. And you just have all kinds of things you're adding into my life and lives of others. So thank you again.
Well, it's so fun. And I just want to acknowledge you. It's so fun because you truly do add value, and you are such a value to valuable people. So you live that quote truly as someone who gets to be in your circle and in your sphere. So I just want to acknowledge you for being authentic, being true, and always being a giver before ever expecting to be a taker. And it's such a blessing and so fun to be in your orbit. So thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, thanks, Gab. Appreciate you. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Gab. Just awesome. You can hear the positivity and just the way that she and Brian just really draw out purpose out of people. And check out that purposetest.com. You can get that discount code there, and we'll stick that in the notes below. But yeah, just really encourage you, anything we can do to help you find your purpose, to do what you're here to do. Because again, people a lot of times will get to financial freedom, and then, or like she was saying, the two most dangerous years are like the year you're born and the year you retire. Well, why is that? It's because everything you were focused on when you retire has now changed. It's all different, and people can have a lot of health issues. So it sends a signal to your body. It sends a signal to your brain that you have a purpose and you're here to do. And I just believe every single one of you, me, all of us are here with a purpose to do something and to make a difference. And the world feels it when one of us is gone, or we don't step forward and say, I lived out my purpose. And I don't want to be on my deathbed saying, man, I just missed it. I didn't do what I was here to do. So my friend, I hope you find what it is your purpose is. You can call it a brand, you can call it just a way you find to help people, whether it's your family, it's your neighbors, it's the world. You find a way to do that. So thanks for taking the time to educate yourself. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Mailbox Money Show. You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.